what up, perps? Kid Copious. Back in effect. Purple State Party, you know what we're doing here. We're trying to rep America, the center, and common sense. This one goes out to all the people in California struggling under the weight of this weather. Roads are flooded out, towns are cut off, snow is covering everything, making life in some areas damn near impossible. But anything's possible if you just stay strong. And Fetty on. Yeah. There you go. You know, all the rain and snow that we've been getting here reminds me of consequences. You know, we needed the rain. Not quite this much, quite this quickly. And, you know, it's tearing up even in the city. You know, it's tearing giant potholes, sinkholes, shit like that's happening. You know, but, you know, for 40 years we were supposed to be building a reservoir. We never built that reservoir. It's not eco-friendly, I guess. I don't know. I don't understand these people's thoughts. But, you know, we had record rainfall right now. You know, Gavin Newsom is stepping up and he's saying, hey, we can start storing this stuff underground. I don't know why he needs to say that. But, you know, the consequences of not building that reservoir is that we don't have an extra reservoir. The problem with not tackling some of our infrastructure issues means that a lot of rain can really fuck up a lot of lives. Democrats, particularly the really liberal left, the democratic socialists, they don't believe in consequences. They don't believe criminals, drug dealers, drug users, alcoholics, homeless people, they don't believe they should face consequences. It's a free-for-all. But there are consequences. So whether or not you think that a person is responsible for this or that, when you are soft on crime, the consequences are more crime. When you put all of your eggs into the green energy basket, the energy that we're using today becomes expensive and people suffer and people can't afford things. Those are consequences. I don't want to be some dick about consequences, punishing everybody to the fullest extent of the law. No, I know there's wiggle room, but they're applying wiggle room to everybody. And they're not allowing us financial wiggle room because they're pricing us out of energy. Energy is a foundation of our society. And when that's too expensive, people suffer and die. And when you don't manage wildfires or the forest, you get the wildfires that burn people's houses down. You get flooding. You get drought. These are consequences. In life, there are consequences, and there must be consequences. Are you a person who gets a new game? Say, I had a friend, he got the latest GTA. And he immediately wanted cheat codes for God mode. What is that about? Without consequences, the game is no fun. Without consequences, the world doesn't work. So we're going to look at some examples of Democrats and liberals not wanting to have consequences for things. But first, some mental irregularities. First up in mental irregularities, a little question for you. A Maryland bill will prevent anyone under 25 from, fill in the blanks on that one. Think about it for a second. What could that possibly be? Yep, from being charged with felony murder. Felony murder. So if you're 25 or younger, 24 or younger, you cannot be charged with a felony murder. Felony murder occurs when someone is killed while a felony crime like robbery or rape is being committed. Yeah. And that's going to affect your sentencing. That's going to affect your parole. That's going to affect everything about your court case if you're not being charged with felony murder. See how that works? Eventually, criminals will just figure out that, hey, you know, if I want to take somebody out, if I want to rape that girl I've been obsessed with, you know, I'm going to trade, 7 to 15 years for it. That's not much of a deterrent for somebody who's determined, who's somebody who's already that bonkers that they think that way. So what's that going to do? Well, for one thing, it's going to let criminals back on the streets. And why? Well, because no one under the age of 21 should be introduced to the justice system because the brain is not fully developed. That's what the Juvenile Justice Service director in Maryland seems to think. That's awesome. But then one of the Republicans comes out and says, proponents of the bill say the human brain is not fully formed until the frontal lobes, until the age 25. But yet, we're doing things in the General Assembly, letting children vote earlier and earlier, letting them get hormone-inducing drugs to change their sex. So they can make those decisions. They can vote, but they can't be held accountable for felony murder. Wow. No consequences, right? But you're just going to have gangs using kids to do their hits. They're going to trade that. They'll be out before they're 30. And as one of the sheriffs says, the solution is not changing to law to excuse or to make excuses for the violator. The process that needs to be in place is to hold that person accountable. Exactly. Without consequences, nobody ever learns. But they don't want consequences. Further mental irregularities. The clean energy czar, Podesta, says Chinese companies will be a big player in future energy production. I mean, are we going to go back in time and align ourselves with Germany because they build good products? No. No. We do not get into bed with our enemy and then give them money that was set aside to help American companies. And Manchin's up in arms about that because he helped author the IRA. There were provisions that were designed to decrease U.S. reliance on Chinese industry for electric vehicles and green energy development. We are not going to sell out to the Chinese for green energy. Don't let them convince you of that. Problem is that the people who vote aren't paying attention. They just go, oh, green energy, I'm voting for that. They don't care where that green energy comes from. And he gets in there, Podesta, and he staffs up with far-left climate activists who need to set ambitious goals. Fuck the rest of us. Fuck the common citizen. Fuck the middle class. Fuck the struggling students. Fuck all those people. We need to climb in bed with China. Manchin went on to say that it's not consistent with either the IRA or the CHIPS Science Act, which had bipartisan support due to concerns about Chinese supply chains. The latest polls are not good for China in terms of how America feels about them. And they just want to send money to them for their stupid agenda, thinking there'll be no consequences. Oh, there'll be consequences. Here's another one. Assemblywoman Mia Bonta, who is the wife of our Attorney General here in California, killed a bill that would raise sentencing for violent crimes committed with guns. How are you going to do that and then say we need tougher gun control laws when you don't punish the people who illegally use them? You want to punish people who legally own them and excuse the people who illegally use them. Does that make any sense? And not only did she do that, she made it so that you can't even rewrite or reintroduce the bill in a different form. Because she wants criminals on the streets. That is part of their plan, sowing the chaos. I don't know how the fuck that works in their plan, but it does. And remember, these are politicians. They can get security details. They can get raises. So their decisions have no personal consequences. We, the average citizen, bear the consequences. And they're doing this in a time where homicide and rape is spiking statewide. Our top cop, Bonta, her husband, aligns with progressive prosecutors. He's not George Gascon. He's not a prosecutor. The only person he wants to prosecute is cops. That's it. Because he can't. Because he feels bad that he's an entitled white guy, so he just wants to free every single criminal that he can. And again, no consequences. House Dems vote against bill to permanently classify fentanyl as a Schedule I controlled substance. Schedule 1, marijuana, heroin. But they're arguing, well, if it doesn't lead to death, well then excuse me, how is weed a Schedule 1 drug? When was the last time that weed led to a death? But they're broadly arguing that Republicans need to treat the matter more like a health crisis and less like a criminal crisis. Okay, we've tried it your way for a while now. Look at San Francisco. How's it working out? And of course, when you talk about the penalties for fentanyl, the ACLU and people like that have to chime in that it would exasperate pretrial detention, mass incarceration, and racial disparity in the prison system, doubling down on a fear-based enforcement-first response to public health challenge. We've tried doing enforcement, never. That didn't work. All right? This whole idea that if you pass a law to stop fentanyl from being dealt and even used, it's going to disproportionately affect people of color. Well, that's not too surprising considering that the people dealing fentanyl in San Francisco are illegal Hondurans. So, yeah, I guess if you round them up, you're not going to find too many white people in there. Really? So we should just excuse all behavior because it affects people who are non-white? Really? Okay. Talk about no consequences. Oh, well, wait, a baby dies in Florida from fentanyl exposure. Yeah. They put it in prescription drugs, counterfeit prescription drugs that come out of Mexico. All right? Fentanyl is one of the dangerous things we've ever seen. All right? You people who are still wearing masks while driving, deathly afraid of COVID, you should really be afraid of fentanyl. You don't know where it's going to strike. And it's only going to get worse. So whatever numbers that could be quoted right now, immaterial, those numbers are going to go up. They're going to keep going up. Again, no consequences. If you're a criminal, you can vote. Well, of course, because you're going to vote for them. Democrats do these types of voter block seizures, so to speak, where they're soft on crime, so they get the criminal vote. They're over the top with, for example, like trans rights, like allowing men to compete against women and shower and expose themselves to women in the locker room. And when the women in the locker room say, hey, there's, we got a dude walking around in here flashing his junk, they say, well, maybe you should talk to a psychiatrist. No consequences. Lock up those voting blocks. They look at it like this. You're a female college athlete. Well, you're definitely voting Democrat because you want to have an abortion. So, and you're a criminal, so you're going to vote for us. And you're the transgender person that we allowed to go on the swim team and become a big star. So, of course, you're going to vote for us. That is not a way to govern. That is a way to get reelected, but it's not a way to govern. Oh, God. Mrs. Mental Irregularity herself, Kamala Harris, says kids are struggling with climate mental health issues. I don't even really want to get into this. It's so freaking stupid. Yeah, of course, kids nowadays are worrying about starting a family. Guess what? So did we all. For me, it was nuclear war. Oh, should I bring a kid into a world that's going to be destroyed by nuclear bombs coming from the USSR? Give me a fucking break. But they're the ones, the Democrats are the ones who have perpetuated the fear of the climate change and all of that crap. So why would anybody trust these people to educate their kids? Talk about no consequences. I mean, you have people graduating that are illiterate. You have people who are graduating who can't even do basic math. That's fucking insane. I'm talking about the consequences only affecting the average citizens. A lot of New York City's climate laws are going to affect in 2024. So building boards, residents, building owners, they have to make tough decisions. Glen Oaks Village, a collective of more than 2,900 apartments, plans to spend $24.5 million replacing its gas and oil broilers over the next 5 years, but will still incur fines. So even if you're trying, they will fine you because it's a money grab. It's not real. It's not real. If it was real, there would be exemptions. They would figure it out. There'd be government money going into this. No, they're putting it all on the average citizens, like Arlene Bett, a 60-year-old long-term resident who paid off her one-bedroom apartment, but worries about a $500 monthly maintenance fee growing. Yeah. What are they going to do? If you got to take 2,900 units and make them all energy compliant, and you got to do it in a year, yeah, it's going to cost money. Fees will go up. She will end up losing her apartment that she spent her life paying off. At 60 years old, it's kind of old to start over. But then they want to turn around and talk about, oh, we need to help the homeless. Yeah, as they're creating the homeless, because their stupid policies have consequences. California to halt $54 million contract with Walgreens over after company restricts sales of abortion drug. You know, this is a good time to bring up something. You know, myself, I am pro-choice. I think a woman does have a right, okay? But I'm not pro-abortion. I would never choose that in my own life. It never came up. Well, I guess it did come up. I mean, I had a kid, but I mean, it was like, I mean, from Jump Street, we were having it, so I don't think we ever even remotely considered it. But okay, so Walgreens doesn't want to sell the abortion pill in states that might take legal action against them, such as Texas. Again, really dumb idea, Texas. I don't understand what is gained by outlawing abortion. It's the absolute stupidest thing that the Republicans have done in quite a long time. And yeah, you can list other stupid things. Fine, great, I'll give you those. All right, but abortion, outlawing abortion, dumbest thing ever. Speaking of dumb things that are brain work not. George Gascon, look at it. I mean, does he not just look like an entitled white dude? But he's punishing people for not believing his ridiculous mantras. He is punishing employees who stand up to policies that don't work. He doesn't send representatives to parole hearings anymore. So nobody argues it. Only the family, the emotional family. Instead of like a logical district attorney or assistant district attorney or whoever going and laying out why a prisoner should be held for the length of their term. Nah. But he retaliates. Sean Randolph, former head of the juvenile division, was shuttled off to parole after pushing back. Won the case. So his decisions aren't going to affect him. But LA City is going to have to pay millions of dollars in lawsuits. And this is a guy who has called public servants internal terrorists. And he treats them as such. He silences their voices. He engages in petty and vindictive acts of retaliation. And the worst part about it is that at the end of the day, all he's succeeding in doing is releasing criminals. And yet people support him. We're going to touch on the kidnapping that happened down in Mexico. You know, real sad. 2 people had to lose their lives. But it's really strange how it sort of turned out here, that the cartels actually turned in the shooters, or at least presented 5 people, sacrificial lambs. Because just like the mafia of old, sometimes the criminals in an area are the state. They're the people who are responsible for getting the trash out, keeping the streets safe. But of course, you know, it doesn't really help when that's the headline. Fentanyl is your problem. Right. Yeah. It's our problem. We're not doing anything about it. So fine, let's do something about it. We have a narco state on our southern border, and we're doing nothing about it. Yes, much like ISIS, the cartels help take care of rural towns. They step in where the government is lacking, let's say. But they're still terrorists. They're still sending poison up to the United States. Biden demands border town where tourists were kidnapped reduces resort fees. Yeah. It's hard to laugh about that particular story, but what's funny about this is the fact that that is the way the Democrats and Biden act. Instead of a real solution, it's a feel-good solution. Feel-good solution. Speaking of feel-good solutions, the whole idea that hardened criminals self-identify as women and are being put into the women's prisons is leading to lawsuits. Mainly because it's against the Geneva Convention. Serial rapists and sex offenders and people like that, even if you remove their penis, chemically castrate them, their brain still works. They can still assault and harm women. I am about making criminals face their consequences, and if they can rehabilitate and be released, fine, great. But while they're in there, they do deserve certain rights. And one of those basic rights is safety. And this violates all of that. It's the most helpless feeling. It doesn't make any sense that you will put a rapist in a women's prison because he says he is a girl. It doesn't make any sense, folks. And it needs to change. And it needs to change with people standing up and saying, no, that is insane. Instead of just simply defending it because you belong to that political party. Here's another one that we got to cover. The unseen video evidence. Look, a lot of what happened on January 6th was ugly. It was wrong. It was illegal. But, keep in mind, the police shot an unarmed woman, and nobody's in an uproar about that. And the truth of the matter is that the so-called, the figurehead, the scapegoat, Jacob Chansley, he read Trump's tweet telling protesters to go home and remain peaceful. He was escorted through the Capitol. He did some dumb shit. Okay, great. That's fine. But again, he was doing it for a political reason. He didn't burn down a mom and pop grocery store. But I think Elon sums it up best. Chansley got 4 years in prison for a nonviolent police escorted tour. Dave Chappelle was violently assaulted on stage by a guy with a knife. That guy got a $3,000 fine and no prison term. You're making up excuses for criminals who deal drugs, attack women, attack people on the streets. Look at what just happened in Philadelphia. A woman was beaten down by a mob of kids. And they're not going to do anything about that. They don't want to do anything about all the looters with the Floyd uprising, whatever the fuck we're calling that thing. But yeah, somebody stands up to the Democrats, boom, 4 years. So it's telling. Biden gives Black American of Courage Award to Robert Downey Jr. for role in Tropic Thunder. Yeah. Nobody canceled him over that. Look, it's not what you do, it's how you do it. Some people say it's not what you say, it's how you say it. Well, no. In these kinds of cases, it's what are you doing? Are you dressing up in blackface and making fun of black people? Or are you simply just making a comedy? This is becoming more and more true. There is no common sense left here in California. There really isn't. You look at the recent rains like we were talking about earlier, why haven't we built more reservoirs? Why haven't we figured out ways of maybe funneling our wash system here, our sewer, not sewers, but runoff control, drainage control, whatever you call it, wherever you are, we don't recycle that back into environmental use, aka watering lawns or watering city properties, things like that. A lot of people, do use reclaimed water and do use recycled water, but not enough. We don't necessarily need it in our homes, but if you are, for example, building a mega warehouse, you're not allowed to have dust coming from the site. So you have to keep the site wet. All of that water is sitting there, but there's never been a plan. Because as soon as we come up with a plan to divert that water, some fuckwad comes forward and says, what about the frogs? And then the whole project gets shut down. And it costs millions and billions of dollars in red tape costs. So this was the favorite thing I saw. I don't know how old this is. I just saw it this week. But that really illustrates what's going on in our society. The framing of the network. The network? How about the narrative? How about the framing of the narrative? Why don't we go with that? That sounds a little better, doesn't it? But there it is. It's all how you show it, what you show, how you frame it. But at the end of the day, no matter how much framing and narrative control is used, real life consequences are real life consequences. When you let criminals out as early as possible and they go out and murder the police officer, no matter how you frame their release, those police officers are still dead or wounded. And that's something we need to start looking at. They have framed the green energy to the point that it's absolutely unbelievable now. And it is wrecking lives, and it will only get worse. And I don't want to sit here as a doom and gloomer, because I do know that there is hope. But that hope is that we turn the ship around quickly before we lose touch with all of the cheaper options that we once had. And maybe we start holding our politicians accountable and they stop doing crazy shit and get back to simply running the government in a way that benefits the most Americans. Boom. That's all. It's that simple. I hope you had fun with today's episode. I had fun making it. Love each and every one of you. Love it. If you could subscribe, like, comment, whatever. Just, try to get the message out there. And I know sometimes it's tough because with the internet and all that, sometimes centralists such as myself, we come off as arrogant or superior, or even a fringe, which I don't really get. Call it cringe, but I'm not fringe. I mean, look at like the gun control issue. One side believes it's basically a free-for-all. They're coming for our guns, blah, 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 blah. The other side wants to take away the guns. Let's boil it down to what it really is. They want to take away the guns. They don't think we have the right to protect ourselves from criminals or the government. Because, of course, to them, criminals are just misunderstood people whose frontal lobes haven't developed. But myself, Purple State Party, we look at it differently. We say, fine, we need to have gun control laws. But on the other side, we also need to be much, much, much more, what's the word that I'm looking for? Hard on criminals who use guns, who carry guns, who steal guns, who manufacture and sell, who illegally acquire and transport, all of that. If you want to have tough laws on one side, you have to have tough laws on the other side. There has to be consequences for the illegal use of a gun, not the legal ownership of a gun. You see, that's the imbalance that we see. So, yeah, sometimes it sounds like, oh, look, we've got all the answers, but we don't have all the answers. We're detectives, like Poirot or Miss Marple, Columbo, Wallander, just to name a few. I watch a lot of mysteries. But you look at the evidence that's presented on both sides. And in some cases, we could even look at, like, for example, green energy, right? Look at the one side's green energy plan and how much it's costing already. How much people are suffering because of it. Right? And we go, hey, there's got to be something in the middle. Fossil fuels are polluting, so let's figure out, something, in the middle. We have hybrids, but the left doesn't want hybrids because it's not electric and green enough. They're imposing these crazy green ideas. And sometimes you realize, sitting in the middle, that one side does have the answer, or one side definitely doesn't have the answer. But it's not that I'm intellectually superior. I think you can all figure that out. You know, I just look at both sides and go, well, why aren't we doing it this way? That makes some sort of sense. Look at all the issues that divide us and realize that in the middle is something. That's really all there is to it. It's not necessarily saying that one side is wrong or one side is evil or right or whatever you want to call it. It's just simply seeing what's presented and saying, why aren't we in the middle? And that's because neither party benefits from the middle. The left and the right, they're not the middle. The middle is something new. And it's something that might not include them. And it might not include their donors and their lobbyists and their viewpoints. That's why we have to be made up of average American citizens. I'm an average American citizen named Kid Copious. I'm Purple State Party, and so are you. Peace, y'all. I love it. Every one of you, you're special in your own way. So let's dance it out. Yeah.